Everyone, my name is Tammy Berman. I'm a licensed mental health counselor here in Plantation, Florida, and virtually around the state. And this is my colleague.
I'm Sheva Ganz. I'm a licensed mental health counselor as well, and I work with Tammy virtually and locally in Boca Raton, Florida.
So we wanted to talk to you about a question that commonly comes up in the world of divorce and life after divorce, which is about when is a good time to start talking to your kids about a partner that you're dating? So I'm going to pose the question to you first, Sheva. What would you say as some of the considerations?
So this is a question that comes up all the time, and it's very complicated because unfortunately there isn't a yes, no, or a clear black and white standard approach. There are a lot of variables that I think should be taken into consideration. One of the most important variables is how old are your children, because depending on what developmental stage the child is at, they might react differently to having somebody new in their lives. Somebody that's a significant other affects their time and their relationship and the family dynamic. And I think what happens is a lot of people assume that the younger children are, the more easygoing they are, the more they won't realize or notice or remember. And they tend to people just tend to do a lot to younger kids because they're like, oh, it's fine. They're more resilient. But actually, younger children don't understand this concept of come and go and loss and renewal the way that we as adults understand it. And a child who's gone through a divorce of their parents is highly sensitive to loss in their life, especially loss of relationships, and that love is a little bit scary now. Is it safe? Is this person staying? And when we bring people, new partners into the family that aren't necessarily staying, the child might get attached to them. If they have children, that your child might get attached to their children. And then if the relationship doesn't work out, then that's just another loss for your child. And especially if that happens repetitively, that might affect the way that they have relationships, or later on in life, that's when we start to develop our attachment styles later on. So I would say with younger children to wait a little bit until things are a little bit more serious. And with older children, they're more able to have conversations, and they have a little bit more of an in-depth understanding of how relationships work, that if you bring somebody into their lives, it's not necessarily forever, and they're a little bit more emotionally prepared if that relationship doesn't work out.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. There's just being sensitive. I want to say that for both of us, to speak on behalf of both of us, there's no right or wrong. It really depends and each child is unique and each family is very unique. But in general, I think this is a good piece of advice to share, is just being sensitive to the cognitive development, like the level of understanding of your kids, and that kind of just what you're saying, the younger the child, the more challenging it is for them to understand coming and going of a relationship, and they may be likely more sensitive to loss. I would say, in general, not to bring people around that you're not yourself very clear about who this person is to me. If you're in the beginning stages of dating somebody and you're not sure about whether or not this is someone for real, for long term, then imagine how your kids would feel and how they would react to someone when you're not clear. Then they don't have a good guideline for how to handle or deal with this person. When you're bringing them into their environment, into their bubble, into their world as supposedly somebody, but you're not exactly sure who, the level of this person and how much you can trust, or that they're going to be there and that you can rely on them and that they're committed and that you have a vision of a future. None of that is clear. So, I would suggest that to flip it and to ask yourself what your own intentions are, to be clear with, your sense, to get clear with, and that takes time to figure out, by the way, right? So, but for you to get clear with your objectives of what would be the purpose of bringing this person around your kids, no matter where you are in the stage of your relationship, so it could be in the beginning, but if you're going to choose to bring a person that is potentially a significant other around your kids, make sure you have clarity around why you're doing that and what's the benefit, what's the purpose of that. If it's to serve your kids in some positive way, great. Then you have more clarity. If it's to serve your own needs, and then I would ask you to also consider the impact to your kids, because it's really challenging in the midst of a divorce to not want to fight for your own needs and interests when you've been dealing with such a struggle of getting your needs and interests met in the context of a relationship, right? So like you're already like, you need to fight and work towards your own life, but you also have your kids to consider. So just be cautious when you're considering bringing somebody around regarding what's the objective, what's the purpose, what's the benefit, how's it going to benefit my kids? And I would suggest to you that the more clarity you have, the more you're clear about who this person is and who they're presenting, and that, you know, who you want them to be and who they have said they want to be in your life. When you have more clarity, then everything kind of falls into place naturally. It's more, then your kids won't be like, well, who is this person? Like, you know, so that would be my suggestion to you as a general rule. And what else? Yeah.
I love that point that you just said about divorce creates this sense of freedom of, I can finally do what I want and I can finally get my needs met and focus on my needs, which is great, and explore that. And yet at the same time, if you have kids, it isn't ever entirely about your needs, and not to forget that piece, because that freedom feels so good. But the choices that we make at that time, really, our children are raw. They are going through what we're going through in a completely different way, and not to forget that. And so the choices that we make are going to affect them and how they handle things later on in life, and just to keep that in mind. But that was a really good point.
Well, it kind of is a segue into something I think you wanted to share also regarding this, one of our last important points.
Yes. So the final point is that you might have met somebody great that you really like them, you love them, you think that they're fantastic, and there's a good probability that at least one, if you have multiple children, will not like this person for whatever reason. It might be a defense or a protection, but allow space for your children to feel however they feel. This is a rough transition and they are processing it on their own way. And a parenting motto that I use all the time is, all feelings are okay, all behavior isn't. So if they don't like the person and they're angry that there's someone in your life, that feeling is okay. They have a right to feel angry. It doesn't mean that they can go and destroy your stuff, throw your dishes on the floor because they're angry. That behavior isn't okay. So
or have a hissy fit around exactly. This new person, and make the new person feel so uncomfortable, you know.
Yeah, and that is just another addendum to that, is that if your child reacts like that, if they don't like this person or are resisting this, I would acknowledge that feeling, and also, you know, have conversations about what this person is in your life. It all feeds in. The more you are clear on your intentions, the easier it will be to have conversations with your children about what this looks like if they're not in agreement, and also make time for your kids separately. I know a new relationship is really exciting and that might get really overflow into your life, but if there's a child that's resistant to it, give them that reassurance. A lot of times the resistance is fear of how it's going to affect their relationship or their family. So spending time with them one-on-one, or giving them reassurance that your relationship with them is not going to change, but at least giving them a place to not like the person the way you like the person.
Yeah. And I don't know how common this is, but just to your point about give your kids some space and time to have their feelings, and it's okay to have different feelings in reaction to a person you have a certain perspective of, they have a very different one. I think it's common, or at least I would suggest to be aware that there's the potential of a big difference. If you're bringing this person into their life, you've already taken quite some time to become familiar with to know, like, and love this person. Meanwhile, they're meeting this person for this first time. Of course, they're not going to have the same. I mean, in fact, I would expect and suggest you anticipate a completely different, like, this is a brand new person to them. So just have that awareness and give enough space and time for them to get to know this person. The less you can pressure a relationship to naturally unfold, the better. So yeah, so all great points. Is there anything else you want to say, Sheva?
I'm just remembering a conversation I had with my kids after my divorce, and I wasn't immediately afterwards, so a couple of years. And I remember my older son saying, if you get remarried, I am not calling him dad. It was like this preemptive challenge and protection. And it was just like mental note of, okay, that's how he's going to react to it. And understanding that your children will react differently, and they're also processing all of it.
Right.
Way.
Right. And that was obviously a thought that came to him at the time and gave him, and I'm glad, and he took the opportunity to express a boundary for him too.
Yeah.
It's great. And
and that's a fear, I think, of what is this person in my life? Is it my father? Do I, like, let's say you're bringing in a male, so do I not have a father already? So what role does this person play in my life? And am I expected to treat him like a dad or a mom? And that a lot of that comes back to having those conversations and understanding that their perspective is different than yours.
Right. And you being clear with who this person is, so you can give your kids clarity, but also get their feedback on how they want to see this person too, because that's a collaborative effort. So this was a great conversation. I think there's so much more we could talk about regarding this particular issue of, when is a good time to introduce a new partner. And thank you so much for the opportunity. And if you want to learn more about the services we offer and further this conversation or get some support yourself, feel free to reach out to us through My Counseling Connections Incorporated at 954-477-7455. Thanks so much and have a great day.